Hello students, this is Fazan Mirza. We are discussing the topic of electrophoresis in this current session, and we are discussing the applications of electrophoresis on a limited scale. So, what's electrophoresis? This is done for DNA and proteins. You can do it for either way. There is a technique called AGE and there's a technique called PAGE. AGE is agarose gel electrophoresis and PAGE is polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. So there are two techniques which can be done. So these things come as these chemicals, they come as powder. So you take the powder from either agarose or polyacrylamide and you weigh it and you add it in warm water. For example, I'm trying to make the agarose gel. Agarose gel is used for DNA and polyacrylamide is used for protein separation. So agarose. So for example, I just weigh some agarose. I'll take the powder form of agarose. I'll weigh it and I'll just add it in warm water and I'll mix it to make, for example, 1%, 2%, etc. solution, depending on how much consistency of gel I want to make. I'll pour this mixture in a tray. So this is the tray that I am using. So when I just add this in a tray, this is how my mixture would look like. I would insert a comb to make wells at one end. So this is the comb that I am adding. I added the comb here and it would make wells at this end. So I would just allow this mixture to settle and turn it to turn and allow it to solidify and turn it to gel. For example, overnight, I'll pick out the comb the next time, the next day in the morning, or probably the next time when I come, I just pick it out. So I'll see these wells have been made. These wells have been dug in this gel, and this thing has turned into a gel. It initially was a warm water mixture that I made from here. So these wells are made, and I remove it from the tray, and my gel, this gel of agarose, is ready to be used in electrophoresis. The same way you can make polyacrylamide gel as well. So what's the function of this kind of gel? So once you have this gel ready, so for example, guys, this is the gel, these are the wells that I am having. I can just, when I want to perform electrophoresis, I'll use this trough or this chamber. I'll immerse my gel in a buffer here, and when this is the buffer solution in which I've immersed it. This is my gel. I've added this in the buffer. These are the wells. So this is how I've suspended my buffer, my gel in the buffer. So I'll just add my DNA ladder to these wells. So these are all the wells. I'll just number these two for my own reference. So I'll add DNA ladder to the first well. What is DNA ladder? DNA ladder is basically DNA fragments of known lengths. For example, DNA fragments having 10 kilobases, 20 kilobases, 40 kilobases, for 50k, 100k, 20k, 200k bases. I'll add these as a combination. They all will come in one bottle or one vial. So I'll just add them to the first well here in the DNA ladder. So these have been added here. Now what I'll do, I'll add my DNA samples which I want to compare here to the other wells. So I have, for example, sample 1, sample 2, 3, sample 4 and 5, fifth. So I add my 5 samples in each of these consecutive wells here, and I'll add these using different micropipettes. So micropipettes are those specific instruments which can measure these DNA solutions or mixtures in microliter. So I have to add these in very minute quantity. So this is added in microliters using different micropipettes. So that contamination shouldn't occur. So my DNA ladder would be added using a different micropipette. My sample one with a different micropipette, and so on and so forth. So I don't end up contaminating these. I have to add glycerin to each well. Glycerin allows the DNA to sink to the bottom of the well so that the DNA doesn't stay at the top. And then I'll add a dye, ethidium bromide or cyber green. Both of the dyes can be used. So I can use either. I can use ethidium bromide or cyber green, and I then apply a potential difference to it. So this is how a potential difference I would apply. I would attach the anode and the cathode in such a way that the cathode, which is negative terminal, is just present near the region where the wells are present or where my DNA samples are kept, and the anode is on the opposite end away from the wells, and this is the potential difference will be applied. So when the potential difference is applied, DNA will behave as a giant anion. The DNA will be pushed from the cathode and it would travel in this direction as shown by this arrow. So I would, after some, it would just pass through the porous gel. I would stop the potential difference, and I can expect that the smallest DNA fragment would get the least resistance while traveling through this gel. So they will travel the farther most. I won't see anything as yet. When I take this gel out, all my DNA samples have moved across this gel, but I still cannot see them because they have this dye ethidium bromide or cyber green, but they both of them will not show up any image to the naked eye. I have to place them in a UV chamber. So when I just put it in the UV chamber, I'll just see this kind of an image. So these bands will start to grow, will start to glow. So this is my DNA ladder. Why is it called DNA ladder? You can see this, it's giving like a ladder like appearance. So this is the DNA ladder. These are my samples that I added. So I can just interpret the results after just a bit of adding some thoughts here. So I know my DNA ladder was having these bases. So it was having this 200k base and 100k and so on and so forth. So the 200k base was the heaviest of all, the largest of all. So it traveled the least distance in the same lane, and 10k was the lowest, so it traveled the most. So this is how they have been separated, and these are my samples. So I can just see where my samples ended up, and I can just compare the size of each of the sample to the DNA ladder. For example, my sample 1 is having DNA fragment of 100 kilobases and a DNA sample of 40 kilobases. My second DNA sample is having DNA of 200 kilobases only. My third DNA sample is having 50 kilobases fragment. My fourth was, and the third is having this one as well, 20 kilobases. The fourth is having 200 kilobases size DNA. My fifth sample is having 20 kilobases and something which is smaller than 10 kilobases. So I probably need to repeat the experiment for the fifth sample here to get a better resolution. And this time I have to use a different DNA ladder which will have fragments smaller than 10k, so that I can actually resolve what this particular DNA fragment is sizes. So ethidium bromide, ETBr, or cyber green, these are carcinogenic chemicals. So you have to make sure that you dispose them off in a bag labeled as biohazard. So the direction of travel will always be away from the well or away from the cathode and towards the anode. So how the movement is occurring? The movement occurs basis of the difference of charges, the net overall charge, how much negativity the DNA or the components are having. This is how they will be separated. They will be separated on the basis of size and the composition of gel, how consistency, how much thick the gel is, what's the pore size of the gel. These are the commonly used fragment, you can say visualizing agents. These, for example, ethidium bromide, or methylene blue, or Nile blue A, or as I told you, cyber green. So these are the ones that can be used here. So coming on to VNTR. What are VNTR? VNTR are variable number tandem repeat sequences. They are present in the DNA, or they are present in our DNA, and these are the basis of our DNA fingerprints. So they are unique. These are VNTR are unique sets of nucleotide sequences which are present in our DNA, and they are quite unique for every individual. So two individuals, unless they are identical twins, they will not have the same VNTR sequence. So where do we get our VNTRs? We get our VNTRs from our parents, and some of our VNTR will be from our biological father, some of them will be from biological mother, but none of our VNTR will be from any third source. So every VNTR that we have will be coming us from the genetic line, either from the biological father, or from the biological mother. So VNTR sequence, as I told you, they are the basis of paternity testing, or genetic profiling, or forensic sciences, handling the chemicals and pressing charges and proving that yes, okay, this is the person who committed the crime. So here, the paternity testing genetic profile, this VNTR sequences are shown to you. I have my control DNA added to the first well, mother's DNA here, the child's DNA here, and this is the possible father. So once the DNA is run, you can see that the control DNA is run. Here you can see that the DNA of the child, these are the VNTR sequences of the child, these are the VNTR sequences of the father, these are the VNTR sequences of the mother. So the first VNTR sequence of this child, you can see that this VNTR is present in the possible father. The second VNTR sequence of the child is present in the possible father. The third VNTR again is present in the possible father. The fourth VNTR is present in the mother. This VNTR is in possible father. This VNTR of this child is in mother, this one is in father, this one is in mother, this one is in father, and this one is in father as well. So this child is not having a single VNTR sequence which cannot be attributed to either the mother or the possible father. So this means that this possible father is actually the father. So yeah, this is the paternity testing done. Why do you use control ladder here? There was no reference of control ladder. We didn't compare anything here. So just think about it. Think about it and try to come up with a reason that why control DNA was used here. Okay, So this is again something very interesting. So this is DNA collected from the from a crime scene. So if the blood stain is taken from the crime scene, and these are the DNA taken from 1, 2, 3, these are the suspects. There are 7 suspects, possible suspects. See, 7 suspects actually are possible criminal. Will be one of these people actually are the ones who actually committed the crime. So you have the blood stain from the crime scene. These are run here, and the samples are taken from these ends, and they are added as well. Now when you apply potential difference, you get these separations. So okay, just try to see who committed the crime. So just pitch this blood stain DNA samples VNTR against these, and I think you can conclude very well whether the person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 who committed the crime. And again, blood stain at a crime. So when blood stain is taken from the crime, what do you think there would be the DNA source in blood? Okay, that's something to think. Now, this is the how this electrophoresis can be used in separating of proteins as well. So we discussed that how it is used in the separation of DNA and the VNTR sequences. So it is applied in separation of proteins as well. So you know that your hemoglobin is HbA and HbS. So for example, you added the normal hemoglobin HbA HbS combined here, and this is the one from the parents. Both are the carriers of HbA HbS, and these are their 3 kids. So what do you see here? You see this kind of separation. So I've just displayed everything all at once. If you know that HbA, this is actually more polar. Why is it more polar? Because it's having the amino acid glue. And HbS is less polar because it's having the amino acid well in place of glue. So the parents who are carriers, the person in the blood in the second and the third well, you can see that their DNA, their proteins are traveling to which distance. So you can just see the distance that they covered. So the HbS traveled to this distance, and the control and the father and the mother, and the control is here, and the father and the mother, they both have the HbA as well. So this is HbA, this is the HbS. So both parents are actually carriers of HbA HbS. So they are the carriers of HbS actually. So they can pass it on to their kids. So they have 3 kids, and the blood sample is taken for each kid. The hemoglobins are separated. So there's this kid, the kid whose sample was added to well 4. So you can just see that the hemoglobin traveled here, nothing on S. So it means that this individual is HbA HbA. So their first kid is homozygous dominant. This kid whose sample was kept in well 5, you can see this kid is having HbS and HbA both. So this is a carrier kid, similar to the parent, and this one is in the 6th well is HbS HbA. So this one is suffering from sickle cell anemia. So this HbS is actually less polar, so it travels farther, and more polar travels much farther. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.